Hi, my name is still Joe. I am still a fat black belt, and I am here to talk about how my day went nutritionally and exercise wise. And you'll notice it is earlier than I am usually. Well, you might not notice this, but I noticed that it's earlier than I'm usually recording. I have some stuff going on. I have a friend coming over tonight. I want to get this out of the way. Hopefully, we are in slightly more vivid color. I've been playing with the color settings on the camera. So I'm going to go over food real quick, then I'm going to piss people off and talk about calories, and then I'm going to cut this thing short. Breakfast today was a spinach and egg white wrap from Starbucks. Those are pretty good. They're very good. They are, low in calories. They have lots of cool stuff in them. I'm down. We went to Longhorn for lunch. I had an 8-ounce sirloin and a side of broccoli, as well as like the butt part of one of the loaves of bread. Like I do the front, I do the butts, the bread ass, if you will. And that was that. It was a pretty simple lunch. No training today at the Dojang. I think today is probably going to be a Taekwondo forms day. I'll have to do it at home. I know like 24 forms, so I'm just going to try to do all of those. And by the time I'm done, that should be a very good workout. For dinner, the wife and kids want pizza. Now, I'm not going to begrudge them pizza, but I'm not down with that today. So I think I'm going to make myself some green beans, some chicken breast. I'll prep that all ahead of time. That way, when the pizza gets here, if I want to have a piece, I can, and I'm not going to like stuff myself, and it'll be fine. So that is going to be the day in food. And it helps me, I think, that I have said that plan on the internet ahead of time. Because if not, then I might be like, oh, do I really want to prep chicken? But now I've said it, so I'm committed. That helps. So I'm going to make a terrible mistake and talk about calories. I don't like calories. There's a lot of reasons that I don't weigh and measure my food and count calories. They break down into sort of two main camps. The first is, and this is probably the most important, that like I'm just not in a place where that matters. I feel like unless your diet and nutrition and your routine and your fitness, unless that's all so dialed in that the individual numbers matter, then you're not going to benefit from counting calories. Not really. You might benefit from like having a general ballpark idea of where your calories are, but you're not going to benefit from any sort of like intense calorie counting. Not unless you're if you're a bodybuilder, it's mandatory. It comes with the territory. I'm so sorry about it, because that's a miserable life. I'm not about that. But the other thing is that calories are like the worst way we have of measuring food, except for most of the other ways. If I'm being honest, I think that measuring macros like in grams is probably significantly better than calories, but only by a little bit. I'm going to ignore for the time being the huge variation in how individuals process calories, but just to gloss over that a little, there have been plenty of studies done on, lean individuals, people who tend to stay lean, and when given excess calories, what happens is they move more. They move more, they burn off those calories. They don't even know they're doing it. I want to be really clear about this. Their body just does that. And similar studies say that if you take somebody that tends to be larger, that is, in the maybe not even in the obese range, someone who just packs on pounds, what you find is that when you reduce their calories, they move less, and they don't even know they're doing it. They just feel tired. It's really common. So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me that there is something else going on there. There is more to this story than just thermodynamics. So when people say, oh, it's just calories in, calories out, that is a little bit like saying, oh, the economy is just supply and demand, right? Like, yeah, in some ways, that is a chunk of it. But that's only the whole story if you don't look at what's going on. If you don't know what you're talking about, that sounds like the whole story. But it isn't. It is more complicated than that. On some level, you cannot escape thermodynamics, and there isn't anybody who can, eat Big Macs and ice cream sandwiches every day and not gain weight. That is absolutely true. But there is also a big difference, right, between eating garbage all day every day and just having some extra calories. Those two things are not the same. But I think the biggest reason that counting calories is bad is because you don't know how many calories are in your food. You don't. First off, when I went into Longhorn today, I did not ask them for 500 calories of steak. I asked them for an 8-ounce sirloin. And that 8-ounce sirloin is probably somewhere between 7 and 10 ounces, if I'm being perfectly honest. And the fat content is variable, and the way it is cooked varies, right? But this is nowhere is this more pronounced than when we talk about ground beef, so I'm going to use it as an example. First off, how many calories are in 8 ounces of ground beef? Do you know? You don't. If you were to Google it, you might think you know, but you still don't. Because the answer depends on the fat ratio. I have not given you enough information to answer the question. And if you're thinking like, how big can the difference really be? Okay, 8 ounces of 70/30 ground beef, 750 calories. 8 ounces of 90/10 ground beef, 400 calories. 8 ounces of 95 ground beef, 300 calories. Do you see where we're going with this? The difference is massive. Massive. And so now, and to be clear, you don't know what the fat ratio of your meat is. You just know what it's close to, right? Because really, you go to the store, you get 80/20 ground beef. Is it 80/20? Maybe. Maybe it's, 78/22. Maybe it's 85/15. You don't know. And you can't know. There's no way of you knowing that. But the biggest issue here is cooking. Close your eyes and imagine you're cooking a burger. Put a burger in the pan. What happens? It goes like this. Why? Actually, initially it goes like because there's water in there. But when you're done cooking the burger, what's in the pan? Fat. Fat that is rendered out of the burger. And the thing is, you don't know how much. You almost can't know how much. So, especially because you can't know how much started in there in the first place, except within, a couple of percentage points. So think about that. Think about the fact that your burger could be anywhere between 310 and 750 calories by the time you're done. Even if you start with the 70/30 stuff, because there's no way for you to know how much fat you have rendered out. Extrapolate that across everything you eat over the course. Extrapolate that across almost everything you eat over the course of a week. And what that tells us is that calories are, at best, sort of an approximation. This is part of the reason that this is bad. The other part of the reason, of course, is that people don't care. You put the calories on the packaging and you think, if people know that food is bad for them, then they will stop eating it. And of course, they don't do that. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. You've seen the world. Hank Green just did a very good video on this subject about food as, surplus food as sort of a novelty. And he's not the first person to say that. Sort of a biological novelty, a temporal anomaly, if you will. And the fact that we just aren't built to process stuff like that. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. It just doesn't solve the problem. Knowing that just doesn't solve the problem. But if there's one takeaway here, it is that it isn't enough to think that you know the number of calories going into your body, because they will lie to you, right? Actual thought has to be given to it. And I think this is why my process is just to start with healthy proteins, veggies, some fruits, throw in other stuff as needed, and it tends to take care of itself. That also prevents me from going completely insane on the subject of food, so that helps too. I don't know what a better system is. I don't know that there is a better system if we are talking about counting calories, counting macros. I actually don't know that a better system exists in that framework. But I know that it is, at best, half-baked information. So anyway, that's why I don't focus too much on calories. You're probably not going to hear me talk about it too much. I may occasionally, drop a number here, but I don't weigh and measure my food for that reason, and for a host of other reasons. And I think it is better for me to just focus on quality foods and quality composition of a meal, and try to avoid the hyper-palatable stuff for the most part, and see where we go from there. That's been working so far. We'll see if it continues working. That's all. I am attending some parties this weekend. My mother is going to be doing some cooking this weekend. and I'm not going to be in front of a camera. I might like check in and do my meals on shorts or something like that to try to keep myself honest here, because I do want to record that stuff. But also the selfie camera on my phone is hot garbage, so we'll see what I can do. In the meantime, I have nothing of value to say, so I will catch you later.